And now it is my pleasure as the keynote sponsor to introduce to you our keynote speaker. Pablos Holman is an inspiring futurist, inventor, innovator, and one of the most renowned hackers in the world. He has a unique view into problem solving, constantly breaking and building new technologies, talents that he uses at his lab up in Seattle, where he works with 150 scientists and engineers who are creating solutions to world-level problems. He is leading a wide variety of futuristic invention projects that he is going to talk about today. He's also at the forefront of 3D printing, the first to ever print food. Did you know you could do that? That's the future, and I'm really hungry, so that sounds really cool to me. And he helped create the #1 selling 3D printer in the world, the MakerBot. He wants to inspire people to create solutions, to invent, and to problem solve by looking at the world through the eyes of a hacker. He's a futurist who is actually creating the future. Last year, Pablos attended Jeff Bezos' prestigious invite-only Mars conference to talk about robotics, artificial intelligence, and going to Mars. He sat down with Warren Buffett over burgers, and his TED Talks have gone viral with over 22 million views. He has braved a lot of weather to join us here today. We are humbled to have him with us in Central Oregon, but a small rectangular stage like this could hold him. So please direct your attention to the center stage and help me welcome our featured speaker, Pablos Holman.
Okay. Any other hackers here today? How long do you think that bottle will last before I accidentally kick it off? So, I've got a zillion things I want to share with you guys, and I'm going to talk really fast to get through as much of it as we can. So, you have to look past me at the screens to see the slides, though. What happened to slides? Or we'll just go without them. So what I do is I work in a lab trying to invent new technologies. And the reason is we have a lot of big problems to solve. Look at this chart. See if you can find yourself. This is the history of humans on planet Earth. So there weren't very many of us. Thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, and it wasn't until just the last couple hundred years when we hit that hockey stick growth curve and went from millions to billions almost overnight. Well, what happened? Well, what happened is we solved hard technical problems that kept humans from thriving, right? How do you feed all these people? Give them jobs, give them homes, eradicate the diseases that are killing them off. Every one of them is a hard technical problem that we solved by inventing new technologies and bringing them into the world, right? But if there's one thing all these extra humans are good for, it's making more problems. So, our job, literally our job in this room is to figure out how are we going to invent on that scale, right? By definition, what worked in the past isn't going to work going forward. So I want to talk a little bit about how we try and do that. So this is my old buddy, Sammy. Sammy's kind of a famous computer hacker who got himself into a little bit of trouble for writing a computer virus that he was using to meet girls on the internet, which isn't the way to do it, just letting you know. So Sammy wasn't allowed to use computers for a few years, but he's back now. And Sammy's been playing with Google Maps. Now, you know how Google knows how to color the roads for traffic? Your phones are all just telling Google that you're stuck in traffic, right? Well, Sammy figured out that he can just lie to Google, and all the roads he's about to drive on clear out. That'd be a pretty good app to have, right? Guys like Sammy have different brains than most people you know, right? They're a little bit deranged. But it turns out they're good for something really important, which is figuring out what's possible, what's technically possible, right? What can we do that's never been done before? Guys like Sammy, if you get a new gadget and show it to your mom, well, she might ask you, what does this do? And you can explain, it's a phone. iPhone, says on the box, Mom. But if you get a new gadget and give it to Sammy, the question is different. The question is, what can I make this do? And he's going to flip it over, take out all the screws, break it into a lot of little pieces, but then figure out what can we build from the rubble. And it's that discovery process that's fundamental to invention. It's fundamental to innovation. Without it, you never get anything new. Nobody's ever invented a new technology by reading the directions, right? These are the guys violating the warranty before they got the shrink wrap off, right? We need them. I'm not saying you want to hire them, but we need them. So this is a protocol diagram, which is a super boring slide, and you can ignore this. But this is the protocol for the encryption system in your phone when you send your passwords to Amazon or Google or whatever. What hackers will do is attack every point in this protocol. What happens if I send a date from the future when I wasn't supposed to do that, or send a 0 when I was supposed to send a 1? It might break, right? If I can get it to break, maybe I can get it to do something it wasn't supposed to do, like give me your password. So when you're designing products or services, you're trying to just make them work for the people who need to use them. You don't have time to think of all the deranged things Sammy's going to do to it. You're going to lose. Sammy's got more time than you. Hackers have more time. They got nothing better to do than just poke at things and see what happens, right? This is Anopheles stephensi. She's a female mosquito carrying malaria in sub-Saharan Africa. And this is the most dangerous animal on earth. Not sharks, not snakes, not spiders. Actually, the person sitting next to you is a close second. Watch out for them. Almost 1 million lives a year are lost to disease spread by mosquitoes. This is the low-hanging fruit in global health right now, right? Half of them are kids under 5 years old. So this is a protocol diagram for malaria. It spends some of its life in a mosquito, some of its life in a human. It's super complicated. We don't understand that much about how it works. So what we do in the lab where I work is we hire hackers to attack every point in this protocol. We can and will eradicate malaria once and for all in our lifetime, but not by reading the directions. There are none. This is the old-fashioned way of going after malaria. You spray chemicals that kill everything, and then you hope the good stuff comes back. This is a real ad from like the 40s. Teach your kids to sing, DDT is good for me. It's not really good for you. But this is how we got rid of malaria in the Southwest here in the US and in Southern Europe, right? That was the best technology we had at the time, but it's not good enough to solve the problem at the scale we have it in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. We have to invent new tools for the arsenal. So when you're an inventor, you always try to invent a solution involving lasers, because lasers are cool. So we thought, what if we could just find the mosquitoes and shoot them down with laser beams, like in Star Wars? So we sort of laughed about it. I hired a hacker. he bought some junk on eBay. 6 weeks later, we're tracking live mosquitoes using motion detection algorithms. And what happens is when we find something moving, we aim a laser. Oh, you can turn that down. You can turn that off, actually. That's mosquitoes. They're coming for you in a big way. When we see something moving, we aim a laser at the moving thing to sample its wing beat frequency. And that's enough that we can sort out mosquitoes from other bugs, but we can also identify the species and the gender. So if it's a female, Anopheles stephensi, well, then we shoot it down with a lethal laser. Here's what that looks like. You want to show the video. Here we vaporized her wing off. She's not coming back. It's okay, you can laugh. Not even PETA comes to save the mosquitoes. Here we vaporized an entire bug. Probably used too big of a laser. But it's very satisfying work if you can get it. Whoops, that's subliminal marketing. Okay. So this is basically my childhood in one slide. I grew up in the cold, in the dark, in the basement, in Alaska, with that thing, which is like the first home computer. And, nobody had seen one before. Nobody even knew what it was for. I didn't even know what it was for. The spreadsheet hadn't been invented yet. It was actually kind of useless. In fact, I had that thing and I had a skateboard, and people were pretty conflicted about which was a bigger waste of time. But Revenge of the Nerds, I was right. It eventually got more memory, it eventually got faster, and it eventually got useful. And my whole life, I've still been trying to use computers to do new things. We measure the speed of computers in how many math problems per second they can do. This is a 1 kiloflop computer, so about as fast as like a third grader. But I was always fantasizing about getting my hands on a Cray XMP. This is a giant supercomputer, 400 megaflops. Just imagine what you could do with all that computational ability. Well, it turns out every one of you is hauling around 115 gigaflops in your pocket. For my whole life, I wanted a faster computer, but that's not true anymore, right? We've got fast enough computers. We were computationally constrained our entire lives until now. Now, we have a surplus of computational ability. We're not computationally constrained. We're imagination constrained, right? We're at the beginning of figuring out what we can do with these computers. This is a totally fake slide that I made up. You guys can take a look at this, but you've used spreadsheets like Excel to make charts and graphs like this one, which is, like I said, totally fake. But this is what I call small data. Okay? Nothing interesting will ever be done this way again. You can just take Excel, drag it into the trash, empty the trash, tell your boss I said so. This is not what computers are for, okay? This is just the DDT of our careers. No offense to Excel, is amazing. We're at this point now where we can do astounding new things with these computers, right? Here's my new computer. It's got 5,000 cores and a lot of blinking blue lights, and it's one of the fastest computers in the world, and there's no reason at all that you need one of these. I just have it because it's cool. The truth is, anybody can rent them by the minute from Amazon. Right? Everybody can get access to an astounding amount of computational ability. Here's what we use them for. So this is a computational model on the spread of disease in Africa. So we collect data on climate, rainfall, travel of humans, all the different things that can affect the spread of malaria in this case. And then in the model, what we can do is we can project out years into the future and see how the disease is spreading, right? Now, this is a model of Madagascar, which is just an island off of the coast of Africa. So we use this for testing. Incidentally, if you go to Madagascar, you should probably go to the middle. And that's actually where the people still are. In the rainy season, malaria covers almost the entire island, but in the dry season, it goes away almost completely. Because we have this model, we can test our interventions thousands of times in software before we ever do it in the real world. What happens if I spray DDT here, deploy some bed nets there, or set up some lasers and shoot mosquitoes? Well, you know what? For the entire history of humanity, we only really got to run one experiment, the one we ran in the real world. Now we have this amazing new superpower. We can run all the experiments and figure out what's going to work the best before we do anything in the real world. This is unprecedented for humans, right? This isn't science fiction. We've been doing this for a decade. We advise 75 different countries on how to optimally deploy their vaccination resources, right? This is how we're going to get rid of polio once and for all. Again, any day now, right? In fact, we use this to help with the Ebola outbreak. The first Ebola outbreak took 12,000 lives. Using computational models like this, we're able to plot optimized ring vaccination campaigns. The second Ebola outbreak, 12 lives, right? This is the kind of power that humans have to solve our problems using these technologies, right? So, a lot of the time when we're talking about, this complicated sounding technology, computational modeling, big data, artificial intelligence, neural networks, machine learning, all this stuff, we're really just trying to make ourselves sound smart by using really big words. The truth is, it's pretty simple, and you guys can all understand it. If you have a photo from your phone, well, that photo is a computational model. It's a data structure, right? The data is what color is every pixel. It's the same thing as a spreadsheet. The data in a spreadsheet, which is also a computational model, is what number is in each cell. Same thing though, right? In my computational model for epidemiology, I don't care what color is this pixel of Africa. I care, how much did it rain there? What was the temperature there? Things like that. Same thing though, right? And then what's going to happen is you're going to take all that data and you're going to run some algorithm on it. An algorithm is that's like a fancy word for a formula in a cell in a spreadsheet, right? Same thing, just a little longer, let's say, right? So say I'm going to change my photo from color to black and white, or I'm going to increase the contrast using a filter. What's going to happen is the computer is going to look at a pixel in the middle and say, I changed the color of that pixel. Now I got to compute what happens to the 8 pixels around it. Now you got to compute what happens to the 8 pixels around each of them, and you have this giant, cascading, exponential amount of computation to do. That's why it's hard. That's why humans couldn't do it for so long. Our computers were too slow. But now, your kids are turning themselves into moose and bunny rabbits with Snapchat filters in real time because we have a surplus of computational ability. But don't get me wrong. Don't get intimidated by this stuff. You can all understand it. Self-driving cars are the exact same thing as what I just showed you. They just have cameras and sensors taking in data at 1,000 frames a second and running giant algorithms on it that are created by machine learning algorithms. Neural networks is just a way of basically saying, The computer generates a bunch of random algorithms and then tests them all to see which one works the best. That's all, right? But it's doing the same thing 1,000 times a second to make a decision about whether to turn left or turn right. That's all. That's the technology that we have. This superpower we can use not just in epidemiology, not just in driving cars, but in every single industry, in every single business. We can make a spreadsheet with 7 billion rows, one for every human on earth, a column for every cigarette you ever smoked, every cheeseburger you ever ate, every time you didn't do what your doctor said, and, mostly inappropriate things come to mind, but that's big data. The algorithms that these machine learning systems generate, well, they're so long, they're miles long, they're too complex for any human to understand, but they give us better answers because the answers are based on all the data, not just males 18 to 25 summarized data. It's an incredible superpower. If we don't invent any technology for the rest of our lives, there's so much we can do with this one new superpower to keep us busy. Okay, so we go to the next slide? Thanks. Here's an example, another one. So this is a microscope slide of a blood sample. And this is what we do for like a malaria diagnostic. You have a human with a microscope counting cells, looking in there, looking at this, trying to figure out, what am I looking at? Is that a malaria parasite living inside of one of your red blood cells, or is it some other crap in your blood? It's really hard. In fact, most countries are lucky to have one person who's actually good at this test. And we do 1 billion tests a year that way. And for malaria, it's not enough because you have asymptomatic carriers. They're traveling around, spreading it to places you already got rid of it because they don't know they have it. We want to test a lot more people. We want to catch them and treat them so that we can eradicate this disease. So we started trying to make an automated diagnostic. So we invented this thing. It's an automated microscope. You take a pinprick like a diabetic would do, and that goes in here in this microscope. It takes 0.5 gigapixel of photos, a lot of photos of that little drop of blood. And then using machine vision, it can go find the malaria parasite in that sample. It's like looking for a marble in a football field. You get like 20 minutes to do it. It's hard. It's one of the hardest diagnostics. Well, this thing has been outperforming the best humans on earth for years now, right? And just last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had made a variant of this thing to go after a different diagnostic, which was cervical cancer. So cervical cancer diagnostic in America is Pap smear. That's the best one. It's only 62% accurate. It's like one of the worst tests ever. I mean, take it from me, it's also uncomfortable. No, just kidding. I don't know, I've heard. But it's an inaccurate test most of the time, 62% accurate. And that's okay in America because American women will go get a test every year or two, and eventually we'll figure out that you've got cervical cancer and we can intervene. 80% of the women in the world will never get a test for cervical cancer. 250,000 women a year die of cervical cancer, right? Well, this thing, our microscope, let us take a lot of the same, basically the same algorithms we were using for malaria and go after cervical cancer. Well, now we're 94% accurate, and it's fast and cheap. In fact, all you need is a cell phone camera, a speculum, and a buddy, and you can do this at home anywhere in the world, right? That it's fast and cheap, and we can take that anywhere in the world, right? We can do better on these things, but we've got to try, right? All right, sorry. Maybe you should work on how I haven't been talking about that one before for long. So all this work is going on at the Intellectual Ventures Lab. That's where I work. We basically just bought one of every tool in the world. That's our machine shop. We hired one of every kind of scientist, put them all on the same team, and then started going after the biggest problems that we could find, right? And that's a weird business invention. You know, if you think about other business models, you know, like even like venture capital, which seems crazy. You take $100 million, you put it in a dozen startups, and you hope one of them pays for all the failures. Well, we take $100 million, we put it in 1,000 inventions, and we hope one of them pays for all the failures. I literally have a batting average of 1. And that's the business model. So, you know, if you're like a lone inventor in your garage with crazy hair and a DeLorean, you only get like a couple of inventions a year. It's a losing business model. That's why nobody you know has a business card that says inventor on it, right? It's not a legitimate career choice, except for me. The right way to solve that is to do it at a large enough scale that you get those hits. It's a hits business, like movies or music, right? So if you're an inventor, there's a couple things you need to get the job done. First, you take the output of science, of basic research. That's scientific discovery. That's what a lot of, you know, what's going on at research universities and things like that, right? And then you need some problems, right? The problems are really important. If I don't have any problems to work on, I'll still invent stuff and it'll just be useless, that's all. And then, you know, you need a garage. So I just have the coolest garage, that's all. But then understand what happens next is entrepreneurship. That's starting companies. That's taking those technologies, adapting them for the market, figuring out how do we bring this to the world, right? So the space where the inventor lives is in between basic research and entrepreneurship, right? Occasionally you got a scientist who can invent something, but that's not really their mission, usually. Occasionally you got an entrepreneur who can invent something, but usually that's not what they're good at, right? A lot of times the inventor is like a heretical scientist who got kicked out or probably a terrible businessman, right? But we're often conflating those things. We're like, oh, these guys smart, have him run the business. No, these are different skill sets. And what happens all the time, it's heartbreaking to me. Like right now, you know, we have a lot of excitement around entrepreneurship, right? But a lot of what's going on is not tech entrepreneurship. We're not giving those entrepreneurs the force multiplier of technology, right? At best, it's like software. We're making iPhone apps, but it's not a new technology. And when you get a new technology, that's when you get that exponent in the equation. That's when you get the ability to solve a problem at a scale that was unimaginable before. I'm going to show you some of our hits. So we started working in this new area of science and technology called metamaterials, which are materials that don't exist in nature, but we were able to use them to manipulate waves, electromagnetic waves, in unprecedented ways. So this is an antenna we invented that can go in the roof of a car and talk to satellites. So we have these cars driving coast to coast, streaming 4K video, uncompressed, both ways off of satellites without using the cell infrastructure. Before, you had to have a big, mechanically gimbaled satellite dish to talk to satellites. That's why you have that dome on your yacht, you know? There's a dish in there. And it's like why the Predator drone has that bullfrog shape. There's a dish in there so that kids in Nevada can control it with a joystick via satellite, something like that. So this is a way of making fast, cheap internet possible on on cars and planes and trains, right? in getting us online everywhere on Earth. What people don't realize, every new satellite we put up these days has more wireless communication capacity than the entire satellite network had a few years ago. Right? There's a massive amount of capacity, but they're LEO satellites, they're close to Earth, they're whizzing by, and you got to steer a dish to talk to them. But when you think about the applications like agriculture, lots of places in the world, there's no internet in the middle of Brazil. Well, there is from satellites. We adapted that technology to make a low-power radar. So radar is normally big and uses a lot of power. Ours is the size of a cell phone. You can put it on a drone, and the drone can see barbed wire fences miles away for collision avoidance. We can put it it can be conformal, so we can put it around the body of a car and do low-power radar for collision avoidance in cars, get rid of the like the spinning laser that Google uses. We invented a technology that we're using to put in satellites now. So you guys have all used like Google Earth, right? Where you can see pictures of anywhere on Earth. We're doing live video that way. We'll be able to see live video of anywhere on Earth. Another version of that antenna we use to re-architect cell coverage. And so in 5G, we use our antennas. Normally, the way cell towers work, like all of us are sharing a cell tower right now, which is why when you get a new 3G, 4G, 5G iPhone, it's super fast for like 2 weeks until everybody else gets one. Well, that's because neither God nor Isaac Newton has given us any more spectrum lately. So all we can do is use it smarter, right? So with our antennas, we can aim spotlights at users, right? And we can reuse that spectrum. We can get gigabit wireless to everyone on the planet this way. That's especially important when you think about places that weren't as wealthy as us and couldn't afford to dig up the roads and lay down fiber optic and set up cell towers everywhere. We can do better. This stuff's interesting. If you had a, Coors Light, which is like a beer that people drink in other states besides Oregon, but it's about the same size as your beer, maybe a little. If you had one of those full of depleted uranium, it would contain as much energy as $12 million of gas at the pump. There's an absurd amount of energy in uranium, but it's radioactive and dangerous and messy, and we don't know what to do with the waste, so we've been stockpiling it, saving it for our grandkids. Maybe they'll figure out how to, make, beer bottles out of it, something. Well, we invented a new type of nuclear reactor that's powered by nuclear waste. What a lot of people don't realize is all the reactors we have today were designed before we were born. They were designed with pencils and slide rules, right? And then we stopped trying. No new reactor technology's been invented or developed in our lifetime. But we can do better now. We design our reactor on that giant supercomputer. We can model all the neutrons in the reactor core and understand what's going to happen before we build this thing. Another thing people don't realize is today's reactors are only 0.7% efficient. The end-to-end fuel cycle leaves 99.3% of the energy in nuclear waste. Our reactors can get the rest of that energy out. This is a stockpile in Kentucky that has 700,000 metric tons of depleted uranium left over from making bombs and making reactors. With this one stockpile, in our reactors, we could power the entire planet, including growth, for about the next 1,000 years. We don't even need to mine uranium. It's all just sitting there. We can do better on these things, but humans have to try, right? We regulated nuclear into oblivion in the 80s, so nobody's been trying, right? You guys sick and tired of hearing about these companies yet? I know I am. These are, people think they're tech companies. These are actually not tech companies, okay? What did Uber invent? I mean, how many taxi companies could have made an iPhone app but didn't? That's all. You know, if Mark Zuckerberg had never been born, do you think we'd still have something kind of like Facebook? Right? These aren't tech companies. These are the logical extension of what you get when you invent internet, wireless data, mobile phones, smartphones, like actual technologies, right? This is not where actual technologies come from. But I'm not complaining, like they might be good products, they might be good investments, I don't know. But we want to be really clear about what's going on here because something important is happening with these companies, right? Each of them is a case where like a couple of assholes from Silicon Valley managed to make an end run around an entire industry, right? We want to understand, these are the poster children for disruption. We want to understand what's going on because it is important. Maybe not saying it's right, not saying you want to do the same thing. Maybe you want to compete with them, but we want to understand that. So when you have been successful as a business, as an industry, or an institution of any description, could even be, successful institutions like, I don't know, democracy or healthcare or religion. In every case, you evolve an immune system, right? The job of the immune system is to suppress risk. And if anything looks like risk, it's change. This is why big companies, successful businesses, suck at innovation, right? If you're a successful business, you hire people who are reliable. You hire people who can deliver results like they did last quarter, a little faster, a little cheaper. You do not hire Sammy, right? In Silicon Valley, we learned our lesson, and we don't fight the immune system. We will not fix your business. We will not fix your industry. We won't even try. We're going to start from scratch. We're going to take all the superpowers we got, mostly from our computers, and we're going to build a parallel business, a parallel industry, and make an end run around you. We're going to leave you and all your legacy problems to die in the dust. That's the plan. I'm not saying it's right, just letting you know. That's what we're trying to do because we think it's foolish and unsuccessful to fight the immune system. Change comes from within. Really? That's not what we see. Change comes from Silicon Valley, whether you like it or not. That's what's going on. And when you look at these stories, Uber's the biggest taxi company in the world. They don't own a single car. Right? Airbnb is the biggest hospitality company in the world. They don't own any real estate. Facebook is the biggest media company in the world. They don't pay for any content. Right? Something important is happening here. We want to understand what that process of disruption looks like. So when you are playing the disruption game, you start by looking for the most screwed up industry you can find. Okay? So here's an example. 100 years ago in America, this is a yarn spinning operation. So this is how you make the thread to knit or weave fabrics to make your clothes. And we don't do it in America anymore. We do it in Asia with a particulate filter. No other new technology is in there in 100 years, right? No innovation, just particulate filter. We used to sew here clothes. We don't anymore. We do it in Asia with a particulate filter. No other new technology. Even the sewing machine is basically the same. This one's electric, and that one I think was probably like pneumatic or something, or maybe there's like a horse on a treadle making it turn. I don't know. But there's no computer chips in the modern sewing machine she's using. It's just better manufacturing tolerances. It's still just the same thing, right? This is a apparel factory in New York 100 years ago that burned to the ground. An apparel factory in Asia, I think 8 years ago. Yeah, so you don't have OSHA in Bangladesh, but that's what's happening. And when you think about how apparel is made, clothes, here's how it works. You grow cotton in one country, ship it somewhere else to be beaten down and bleached out, shipped somewhere else to be spun into yarn, shipped somewhere else to be knit or woven into fabrics, shipped somewhere else to be cut and sewn into t-shirts before we ship them back to America, screen print, team building exercise 1999 on them. You wear them 3 times, throw them in the bottom of your closet, and that's $4. Think we could do better than that? 100 years and no innovation? The problem with this industry is it's stratified. Everybody can only put pressure on the guy below them to cut costs. Nobody controls the whole stack. Nobody's in a position to invest in innovation. So they just keep trying to cut prices, and they keep chasing the cheapest labor on earth, right? Meanwhile, we're telling you that you're a unique and special snowflake, but you're really just a small, medium, or large snowflake, right? And then we print t-shirts for the winning team and the losing team. Half of them we sell, the other half we ship off to South Africa, and we write it off as a charitable donation on our taxes. I have a wildly skewed perspective on American football in South Africa. When's the last time this team won? Yeah. So think about, here's the plight of a fashion designer. You dream something up, you make some samples, you send them down the runway, you take in some orders, you fax them off to China, and you wait 6, 7, 8, 9 months for them to come back on a boat. You put it on the shelf, and you hope you guessed right about what designs are going to sell, what colors, what sizes, and the volumes. Nobody ever guesses right. So everybody in this industry has battle scars from inventory management and guessing wrong. It's all built on speculative manufacturing, right? So think about how we make software. Back in the 80s, the way we made software was you dream something up, you roll out of bed, you write code for like 18 months. And that goes on a floppy disk, in a box, shrink wrapped, at the App Store, where you could drive there and pick up some software and stick floppies in your computer. Inside that box was a postcard where you could write bugs with a number 2 pencil, lick a stamp, and mail them in to Microsoft or Apple or Adobe. We made software on the same 18-month product development cycle, the same way we make sunglasses and shoes and cars. But we don't do that anymore. Here's how we make software today. I dream something up, I roll out of bed, I write some code, launch it at lunchtime. All afternoon, people are emailing me, pissed off that it doesn't work on their Android phone. So I fix some bugs, launch another version, go to dinner. Fix some bugs, launch another version, go to bed. 4, 5, 6 versions a day are normal. That's your web apps. That's your mobile apps, right? And we've been doing it that way for 15 years. In large-scale software development environments like Facebook, we don't even have a release cycle. We use continuous deployment, which means anybody in the company can just dream up some feature, write some code, launch it to 1,000 users. If it doesn't break, they get 100,000 users. If it doesn't break, they get 1 million users. And if that doesn't break, then you get everybody. Every one of you is running a different version of Facebook right now because we're A/B testing you. We're testing you to see what works the best, right? And the point of all this is it means we don't have to be so smart. You got to be smart to guess a year in advance what the market's going to buy. You can hire morons to write iPhone apps in Silicon Valley. We act like they're really smart. They don't got to be so smart because they're just going to A/B test their way to success. And this has made us so powerful. When we say software is eating the world, it's almost exclusively this dynamic that makes us powerful, right? Because we don't have to guess. Guessing turns out to be something humans really suck at. So if we can test instead of guessing, we can make better decisions. Well, now what we're trying to do is figure out how do we do everything else in the world the way we do software, right? How do we get that rapid iteration into other kinds of businesses? How do we get our product cycles down? That's what's powerful. So think about this. We can make self-driving cars. We can make surgical robots. How long do you think it'll be before this exists? What's missing in that video? Yeah, there used to be well, honestly, used to be an Asian lady sitting in front of that thing. This is a prototype. Doesn't really exist, right? But no miracles are required to make that thing. And when it does exist, you will see a sea change in a $2.4 trillion industry. Every human on earth is a customer. And it's currently architected around chasing the cheapest labor on earth. A couple weeks ago, I had lunch with the guy who owns the biggest apparel manufacturing operation in Bangladesh. And he makes clothes. He doesn't even care about American market. China pays more. China doesn't want to be sewing anymore. So it moved to Indonesia and now Bangladesh, where there's cheaper humans, right? We're running out of places to go for cheap humans, right? But when that machine exists, we'll be able to build an apparel industry anywhere, right? That's what I mean when I say disruption. It probably won't be the incumbents who figure this out. It's not going to be Zara. It's going to be two assholes from Silicon Valley who make an automated sewing machine and make an end run around this industry. I'm trying to paint a picture for you of what disruption looks like, that you can watch play out over the course of years into the future. I wanted to play with these ideas, so which mostly came for me from 3D printing, right? So I wanted to make a company where you could wire up the buy now button to the factory and not make anything until it was sold. Manufacture on demand. I couldn't do it with 3D printers because they don't make anything anybody wants to buy, unfortunately, despite our efforts. It's getting closer all the time, but I figured out I could do it with apparel. So look at this. This guy is a kind of traditional artist. He's painting the old-fashioned way on a canvas, and then he puts his art on his computer, and the next thing you know, she's wearing it. So this company now has 1,000 designs like this from artists all over the world, and they're available in 10 different sizes. So I got 10,000 SKUs, and they're all in stock all the time because we don't make it until you click buy now. If we go online and order them right now, they'll get printed tonight and cut and sewn and shipped out tomorrow. And the factories buy the Space Needle. Who makes factories in downtown Seattle or Central Oregon? We can do these things because we eliminated all the guesswork. When I show this to people in the apparel industry, they all wish they had this company, right? Because they're the ones with the battle scars. We can reinvent the way that we build these kinds of businesses because we have these technologies. So see if you can find yourself on this chart. Yeah, maybe in the blue part or the red part. Doesn't really matter. On your worst day, lost your job, girlfriend left you, iPhone battery is dead. You're still in the top 14% globally. That's not so bad. It's like being a lottery winner. like won one lottery by getting to be human, which for mammals is pretty good. Like the only thing coming after you is mosquitoes, and the reproductive process is fairly enjoyable. Won another lottery by getting to be American, which, I don't have to tell you how awesome that is. But a lot of people are living their lives like they got to win that third lottery, right? What I think this means is the world has kind of overinvested in us. More money has been spent on me. More education has been spent on me. More jet fuel has been spent on me, right? And what I think it means is we need to do what we're uniquely good for, right? The world probably doesn't need me sewing in a factory dungeon. Hopefully, I can find something better to contribute, right? If you have an iPhone in your pocket, the cost of that thing is equivalent to the global median income. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. Like, I've got piles of these things, largely with the screws taken out. You should have an iPhone. You should drive a Tesla. You should do all the things that you can do to help us make an early market for these new technologies, waste a bunch of money on them, try them out, and figure out which of them's useful. But then understand that the job isn't done just because we made a product for rich people. In Silicon Valley, we have this kind of religion called scratch and itch. And scratch and itch basically means find some problem that you have, solve that, because probably your friends have the same problem. So it's sort of like budget market research. And this is why, we have a lot of kids in San Francisco making iPhone apps to have weed delivered to their dorm room. Because that's the only problem they have. Right? We're on the West Coast. We're kind of running out of problems here. My problems are like, iPhone battery doesn't last all day, and like relationship problems. I don't have any existential problems, right? So scratch and itch doesn't work all the time. I mean, it's a good way to get some practice, go figure out how to build a product, get some customers, support them, ship everything, all that. Good practice. But then take on a problem that you don't have. A problem that 1 billion people have, right? That's what's important. Here's an example. This woman is taking $25,000 worth of vaccines and packing them into a $2 styrofoam cooler. And she's going to truck them out into rural Ethiopia, start injecting kids, and about half of those vaccinations are going to fail. Every year, 250,000 kids die of something they were already vaccinated against. And the reason is the vaccines didn't stay cold. We don't have any detection for that, so we're just injecting kids anyway. So we invented this thing. It's a kind of super thermos. You can put vaccines in there, stick it in the sunshine, in the Sahara. There's no external power. There's no power cord on it. Can't even plug it in. But you come back a couple months later, and your vaccines will still be cold. This is literally the deployment scenario. You strap this R2-D2 looking thing to a camel, walk for days into rural Ethiopia where there's no roads, set up a clinic, which is like a fancy term for a tree with a doctor under it, with that thing. And you're injecting kids. That's the front lines of vaccination. This is how we eradicate infectious disease. This is how we save another couple million lives every year, right? We can do better on these things, but we've got to try. And the truth is, for a project like this, it was pretty easy for us. I mean, the team who worked on it worked really hard, but it was easier for us. I mean, we got a lab full of PhDs in physics and biology and chemistry. Like, it's comparatively easy for us. Easier than for those folks walking camels around Ethiopia, right? the world did not overinvest in them. So we have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of resources to take on these problems that we don't have. But we had to go there, get the problem, understand it, and bring it back here, where we're good at taking these things on. That styrofoam cooler they used today is only good for 4 hours. So on these things, we can do better. But it's up to us to take all these superpowers that we got from our new technologies. Ask ourselves, does this change anything humans have ever done? Can we do it better? Can we do it faster? Can we do it cheaper? In a more humane fashion, right? A lot of times, the answer is yes. So that's what I had to share with you guys today. I think we have a little bit of time for questions, although somebody can tell me how much time. And hopefully, if you guys want to ask me about any of that stuff, that's great. If you want to tell me why you think I'm full of shit, that would be great too. And then I'm going to try and hang out as long as I can so that we can, if you want, we can chat. I'd love to hear what you guys are working on. So thank you. Thank you. We have somebody with a microphone. Oh, yeah, over here.
One here. There's some more being passed around.
Great.
So you got a question?
Hi, I'm Sandy Cloud with Redmond Proficiency Academy. We're a charter school in Redmond, and we're building a business CTE program. And I loved your quote about essentially we're not running short on computational power, we're running short on imagination. I find working with youth, sometimes their imagination has been really constrained by their devices.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'd love your comments or thoughts on building imagination in our youth.
Yeah, I think of it a little differently. Like, the reason that kids are drawn to the devices is that they are winning a contest for their attention. It's interesting, my kid is 12. She's been in public school until her whole life. And every year, she gets a teacher who's amazing, like I'm impressed with her teachers, but the teachers always get 30 kids. And, my daughter's not the problem kid, so she comes home bored. She hasn't learned anything. She gets her iPad, spends 45 minutes playing video games, and learns a lot. Now, it's not stuff we care about her learning, but the video game is an optimized learning environment. It has to put a challenge right in front of her. If it's too hard, she'll get bored and quit. Nobody's paying her to play. If it's too easy, she'll also get bored and quit. The video game's constantly assessing her level. It's constantly figuring out what's the next thing for her. Well, that's what a good teacher would do if you had a 1-to-1 student-teacher ratio. But we don't even have ideas about how to do that. So, again, I'm not saying that the complaints aren't legitimate. Like, obviously, even my kid, I really question sometimes, like, how many TV shows did you watch on Netflix, and what was the point of that? But there's two things going on. One is I think we are neglecting to use these technologies in a way that serves our values, right? If we care about kids learning other stuff, why aren't we using the proven technology of video games to teach them the things we care about? And then the second part of it is those things are architected to play on human psychology, right? They know how to get your attention and keep it, right? They're giving you a dopamine drip on a schedule. And it's very hard to build an immunity to that. But that is our job. Like every other vice humans have, and we have a lot of them, we have to learn to get it under control. Like we have a lot of, evolved instincts that probably don't serve us too well. Like, occasionally I just want to kill people who get on my way on the road. I don't do that. I don't know, because we learned that that wasn't actually the best thing for society. there's stuff like that that we have to get under control. And I think that all these newer things are similar, right? We had to learn, beer's great, too much beer, maybe not so great, whatever. There's different things we have to get under control. And the attention that you see your kids giving to devices is partly they're building an immunity. Like they're going to learn, like my daughter will learn, how much, Netflix is, making her life better and how much is like making it worse. And, that's a skill maybe you and I will never learn. It might be too late for us, right? But they're growing up with them because they're preparing for the world they're going to live in, which has all those devices. But hopefully they will also be, being those digital natives, they will also be the ones to figure out how do we use, they know the games so well, they know the technology so well, they take them for granted, that will be their toolkit for making the world that they live in, right? We can't really do that for them. We just have to prepare them to do it for themselves. So that's how I think about it. Hopefully that's helpful. Yeah. Microphones? Over here? Oh, I got a mic and a question.
Richard Patterson, ex-rancher from Sisters.
All right.
What problems are you working on now? And do you believe in global warming?
Boy, I absolutely believe that global warming is happening and that it's anthropogenic in nature, right? I understand that some people are under-convinced, but like anything else, I think it's pretty easy to imagine, if I piss on your doorstep once a day, eventually you're going to think it's a little too polluted. That's what's going on, right? We're burning unprecedented amounts of coal and gas. There's a really simple equation that you can learn in your first chemistry class about how that turns into carbon dioxide. The mysterious part is what's happening is the sun, which is, 300 watts per meter. Like there's an incredible amount of energy coming from the sun that lands on Earth, right? That's awesome. But what actually happens is the sun goes right through our atmosphere, the heat most of it, a lot of it gets to Earth, right? Clouds and stuff reflect a bunch of it, and that protects us from, dying a rapid death of radiation like would happen on the moon. That's why, spacemen on the moon have a spacesuit. That's actually reflecting radiation from the sun. But once the radiation gets to Earth, what happens is, especially the oceans and any like reflective areas, sand and deserts and stuff, well, that reflects infrared. Not all the light, not all the energy. A lot of it stays, heats up the Earth, things like that, but it's the infrared that re-irradiates off the Earth. And infrared spectrum is what's heating up the greenhouse gases. So that energy just gets caught in our atmosphere, and it takes years and years and years for it to get sucked back out of the atmosphere, which happens a little bit, significant amount with things like growing plants and trees. Trees, forests, that's why we say they are carbon sequestration, because they're made of carbon, right? The plants, using photosynthesis, grab the carbon out of the sky and turn it into trees, which we then turn into toilet paper, and it's an amazing cycle. But, then what happens is, the toilet paper goes to the incinerator and we stick the carbon back in the sky. So look, historically, we only had one planet and we only had to keep, millions of people going. We have 7 billion people with no additional planets, right? So we've got to figure out how are we going to make it more efficient for us to live here. Global warming is a big problem. We most certainly caused it. The real problem is it's a kind of runaway phenomenon, so we're not even experiencing too much of the effects yet, right? But it's the kind of thing that it's, you gotta plan steering, decades in advance before you're gonna get any improvement. And so the reason it's so important to talk about and solve now is that if we could, start reducing carbon, we always pretend like we're going to reduce. We don't. We haven't. We never will. The truth is, we're Americans. We got here because we got to burn as much crap as we wanted. Americans use 11 times as much energy as everyone else on Earth, right? And so when you look at the things people are trying, like wind and solar, they're good ideas to try and develop, but no matter how many windmills you make, you're never going to offset the energy. Everybody else on Earth wants to live like an American, right? They want to use 11 times as much energy as they're doing today. So that's the demand. That's the real demand curve. And solving that is going to take a lot of work, and we have to get started today, and that's part of why we work on fission. It requires no miracles and can scale up without adding more carbon to the atmosphere, but it's a tough problem. I don't know if humans are even going to be up to it, and the problems that will come from climate change are going to be pretty severe. I mean, we already see it with things like the increase in the number of hurricanes we're getting and those things, so it's tough stuff.
Pablos, a question over here.
Oh, sorry, yes. So problems I'm working on now. So in the lab, we have kind of two classes of problems. The first one is global health, basically anywhere kids are dying or people are dying of infectious disease and things, we want to try to solve those problems because, we don't think it's particularly fair that we all get to live and they don't. So that's what we're trying to solve. There's lots of work there in diagnostics, like I described, and some things like that. On the commercial side, some of those other inventions, what we do is we're just trying to take on the biggest problems. I'm personally obsessed with that sewing robot right now. Like, we're making robots to replace the most expensive humans on Earth, surgeons. I want to replace the least expensive humans on Earth because it gives us it's that kingpin that can let us, look, apparel is a wildly inefficient industry. It's responsible for a lot of the waste and a lot of what's contributing to global warming, right? Because those factories are not efficient. And in America, 30% of the clothes in the landfill still have tags on them. That's the cost of speculative manufacturing. So I think when you look at it from a systems perspective, like, what's this entire system like in like the apparel industry as a system? Well, then you can start to see how we could re-architect them now. And I think that's true. And I'm trying to show you guys what that looks like, because something like that will happen in your business, right? How can we re-architect your business if we were starting today? That's the question, I think, to ask. So, so those areas, I mean, we have inventions in like some science fiction stuff. Like, we have like those antennas I showed you, we're using them to beam power to drones. So with no battery, they can fly indefinitely. Normally a drone has to come back and charge up every 20 minutes. We have I could go on about a lot of technologies. Find me afterwards and I'll tell you more. Yeah.
Pablos, behind you.
Back here?
Hi, my name's Julian. I'm 12, and you really emphasize on the imagination.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, when you were a kid, did you play lots of D&D? Because that's what I'm into.
Good question. That's a good question. D&D, it turns out, when I was a kid, everybody thought it was like satanic, and which just made me want to really check it out. And I remember being in 3rd grade. I wanted to go play Dungeons and Dragons. I had one kind of like a older cousin or something who told me about it when I was on like Christmas vacation in some other state. And when I went back, I tried to find the kids who were playing D&D, and they were all older than me, and they didn't want to play with me. And it was really disappointing. And so you can't really do it by yourself. It requires a great deal of imagination and a lot of time. And so by like junior high, by your age, I got to start playing Dungeons and Dragons, and it was very, people don't realize, like, it's wonderful for imagination. It turns out it's not actually satanic. And we have much worse stuff. But yeah, Dungeons & Dragons, I mean, I wish my daughter would play it. Yeah, I should try and get her into it. It seems like she's too cool for that. But at least when I was your age, it wasn't the cool kids playing D&D. And so, but I had a different experience because that Apple II, that computer, didn't really have like much in the way of games. It didn't have much you could do. All you could really do is like crash it and reboot it. And so I learned, the first programming language I learned was 6502 assembly language, which means the machine language for the chip in that computer. I mean, which is all in hexadecimal. I had to learn ones and zeros. Like I literally learned all about computers, but I was so excited about, you know, about the thing was a bottomless pit of intrigue for me. So that worked out. And I think the difference to look for, things like Dungeons and Dragons are super creative. You have to make up the whole story as you're playing. And you have to tell the story to your friends, and then they're telling you a different story, and you're like trying to make this story together. And like, that's a wildly imaginative experience. And when I watch my daughter sit and watch, like, you know, America's Next Top Model on Netflix, I'm like, I'm not sure there's much to take away from that that's gonna make her, you know, blossom. Because, you know, she might be America's Next Top Model, but it might take a while. So I don't know. I think it's like there might be something better she could do. I don't know. So I think that's like what I love about Dungeons & Dragons, and I think a lot of people, at least in my day, didn't see that it was a truly positive thing to be doing. So yeah, go play D&D. You should also play Minecraft if you're not already. Minecraft is like the starter drug for coders because once you get into Minecraft, then you eventually figure out, oh, if I learn to program, then I can make mods for Minecraft, and I can change the game, and then I can kill all my friends. It's great. People love it. Like, Minecraft is amazing. I try to get my daughter to drop out of school and play Minecraft. She wouldn't do it, but yeah, those are good things to do. So anyway, yeah.
Pablos?
Yeah.
Right behind you here. We have one more question on this side. Oh,
Over here. Yes, hi.
She snuck in.
Hi, I'm Reed Abrahamson. I'm 13. I'm just wondering, what is your opinion on like the lack of coding opportunities in school districts?
Oh, yeah, you're not going to learn anything at school. So that's just kind of like, yeah, it's up to you, kid. Yeah, school is kind of like babysitting to keep you out of your parents' hair, all right? It's, if you want to learn something like coding or anything else, then you're going to have to figure out how to do that on your own. Now, you have a lot going for you, though, which is like you have a lot of time. You can probably get your hands on a computer. And the truth is, you can watch YouTube videos to learn how to code. I had to do it the hard way, so I don't have any sympathy for you. You can totally learn to code. And if you get into it, enough, then maybe you can figure out how to hack into the school and fix your grades and impress your friends. That's probably the best advice I can give you. That's what I did.
Although
A question over here on your right. Pablos, over here on your
Yeah.
right.
So, hi, my name's Monica, and I actually worked on Excel, and I worked in the games business. So
Okay.
I benefited from many of the, the march forward in technology.
Yeah.
And I have to say, when you talk about essentially eliminating all of the low-skill workers
Sure.
in the garment industry, the
Yeah.
first thing that comes to mind is, of course, all the social upheaval
Sure.
that's going to happen. And so my question is Intellectual Ventures, are you guys partnering on that aspect of the problem solving
Right.
with economists and social scientists and so forth?
Right, okay, so that's a good question, and we do worry about those things. But first of all, I think it's important to understand, there's a long life cycle, to a new technology, and a lot of it is, if it's like raising a kid, it's like, somebody has to, get it through school and get it through college and get it into a career and all those things, I only work on the very first part at the beginning, which is like conception, the fun part. After that, I'm trying to invent tools for kids to decide decades from now, is this the right tool to solve a problem, right? And I can't guess which tools will be the right ones. You know, they're going to inherit the things we invent, and they're going to have to decide, you know, does this tool work for, you know, our values and what we're trying to create? So to some extent, I can't take responsibility for that whole life cycle. Humans do need to take responsibility overall for that whole life cycle. And if you look back, like right now, we are dealing with the repercussions of tools that were invented 10 or 20 years ago that are now running at large scale and not exhibiting our values, right? So we're having those kinds of problems, right? And so what we need to do is steer from there, right? We need to say, okay, we overdid it a little bit on social media. Might want to rein that in, waste a little time on something else for a change, right? So those kinds of, that's part of a natural cycle for technology. But the most important thing that you brought up is like what that social upheaval that comes if, you know, if robots take a bunch of jobs, right? And we're really worried about this as a society right now, but I don't think it's actually the biggest problem. If you look at that first slide I showed, population growth, you know, another way to read that is that we made about 3 billion jobs in the last couple hundred years. I think we can make a few more. For things like the seamstresses, in America, we don't worry about seamstresses because they all lost their jobs already. We worry about truck drivers, right? We worry about truck drivers because people have seen self-driving cars exist on YouTube, or maybe in their neighborhood. Therefore, self-driving trucks must be coming soon. There are none deployed yet, but there are prototypes. But when you think about the progression, what a lot of people imagine is, oh, when self-driving trucks come, 250,000 American truck drivers are going to lose their job because we won't need them anymore. But these things take some time, right? The day the first self-driving truck exists, which say it was tomorrow, none of the laws know how to handle that. So you still need somebody sitting in the driver's seat for liability purposes. So it'll take years to change the laws because it's not just federal laws, it's laws in every state and some cases, counties and cities. And then we have to build 250,000 self-driving trucks, and that's going to take a few more years. So you've probably got 5 or 10 years minimum before we start impacting that many jobs. So if you're a truck driver now, maybe take some night classes in Python or something. But the other thing is right now, we have 50,000 open truck driver jobs in America. Like if your kids are worried about what to do, tell them to become truck drivers. I don't know any high school kids whose ambition is to be a truck driver, but if you know any, let them know. Don't try to be a lawyer. We don't need any more of them. Try to be a truck driver because we desperately need more truck drivers. And so it's probably a wise career choice, at least for 5 or 10 years. And so what's very likely to happen is most people who have that career in America will get to work out their career and retire. We'll just stop hiring new truck drivers. And that actually is a great sign for an economy. That's showing you that we succeeded at advancing the economy to where there were better things to do than drive a truck, right? And so with the seamstresses, you know, Bangladesh, for example, their economy is booming because they're getting to sew. That's a step up for them, and they love that, right? They're getting a chance to participate in global trade, like they're trading with other countries. They're bringing money in to do the work that they're prepared to do because they have a lot of people, and they're good at doing that kind of labor. But they know this is a temporary condition. They don't want to be there forever. They don't want to say, great, we'll do all the sewing, you guys do all the cool stuff. No, they want to advance beyond that too. And so that's a moment in the life cycle for an economy like Bangladesh. They're going to be doing sewing for the next decade or two, and then they're going to be hoping to do call centers, and then they're going to be hoping to do the kinds of things that software development, they're going to be hoping to move up that ladder. And so, of course, I don't mean to belittle anyone's situation. There will be collateral damage. There will be people who lose their job. But in a lot of these cases, I think our expectation about how poorly it's going to go is worse than what will actually happen. That's just my view, though. So,
Pablos, I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, I'm very long-winded, so you don't get to ask a lot of questions.
So hopefully this will end up being a short answer.
Okay.
So this is a room full of business people.
Yeah.
And the driver in all of what we do as business people is the capital.
Yeah.
The capital built all that really cool supercomputing power that you're now using.
For sure.
How do you attract capital into those problem-solving issues that you're talking about, as opposed to those two assholes who are making disruptive technology?
Sure. The truth is, for the projects we do, the humanitarian projects, they're all funded by Bill Gates. He supports those projects. And so you could say we're cheating because we're spending Bill's money. But most of them, we think, could sustain themselves as a business, right? In fact, that's one of the metrics we use to determine whether to bother on a project. We don't, we're looking for things that could be contextualized, especially in countries, as a local business. Things like that vaccine cooler, well, we don't make money off of that. We partner with a Chinese refrigerator manufacturer. They make it, they ship it, and there's businesses in other countries. We have other products like that that are made for the developing world where they get set up as a local business that can make enough money to justify its existence and sustain itself. So that's one model. I'm super proud of those projects. We call them Global Good. That's the name of that group. But the truth is, the commercial inventions on the long time horizon, I think, are more important, right? We want to go solve this problem of vaccination, let's say, but I want to solve the problem of getting everybody on the internet. You get all these folks online, well, then they get a lot of things for free. They get to participate in the global economy. They get, literally, I'm getting email from these guys in Bangladesh who I met on Fiverr. Fiverr is like a website that's like, you can give somebody $5 to do like anything. And people from all over the world are on there. There's another one called Upwork. You can hire people in all these places, and they're absurdly cheap. And you're like, wow, I can get a lot done if I just farm it out to cheaper people. But they're excited about doing that work. And what I find is that, when you get people online, they get to participate in that. They're improving their economic position, helps them improve their educational position, or at least over generations. And then, that helps to bring up the economies in those places. I think getting people online is probably as important, at least as important as clean water. You show up in a village in India and say, hey, you guys want clean water or an iPhone? They're like, I'll take the iPhone. Like, they know how to live without clean water. So there's a kind of, imports. You get Wikipedia for free, you get Google for free. This is a lot of power that you get when you get people on. So I think those things are important. And of course, I think energy is important. You solve energy, you solve a lot of other problems for free, right? And so that's probably the most important thing to do. But I forgot what the question is, but hopefully that was helpful. Okay, I'm running out of time. Thank you, you guys. Thank you.